We have this plant of fennel. These guys look so bushy and amazing, and I wanted to ask you, these taste like black licorice. And do you find that they bring in the butterflies or they bring in the monarch larva? Do you find that?
I think they really do, but I do have some more desert adapted plants that we started from seeds that we got from the Desert Botanical Garden, specifically
like
for
the milkweeds and stuff like that.
Different milkweeds and stuff, and we have those planted up front. They don't require as much water, but yeah, you definitely see that. And what really,
look at the bulbs. Yeah.
This, you know, when you look at the fern part of the fennel, it doesn't have as strong as a flavor as what the bulbs do. So these bulbs are getting ready to really harvest. But what I love doing with these is using the whole ferns and these stalks here into broths and things like that as part of your mirepoix almost.
That's great. And just as, you know, the caretaker of the garden, a little sprig here and there as you're gardening, you end up eating a lot of your produce just by grazing.
That's what I do, is I come out here and I graze. Normally the sweet peas don't make it into the house.
I always say the same thing. People don't think I produce much produce from the garden because things like the sugar snap peas are gone in Jake's belly before I even get in the house.
Yeah, I don't make it.
So I'm pretty sure as I'm hanging out with Alex this morning in the garden, we're gonna be accumulating a little bit of a morning spring roll or breakfast burrito of raw, natural, vegan produce. What do you think?
I think this is great in a burrito.
Even though this pepper plant here, you can see how the leaves took the frost.
Yeah.
So people don't think that we get cold weather in Phoenix, but once it hits in that freezing temperatures, we lose the hot weather summer type crops sometimes. But down below, look how your microclimate protected it, and you still have a plant that's loaded with peppers, even though the top part has gotten singed by the frost. So you're gonna leave this pepper plant here and it will come back.
Well, what we'll do is once we know that we're clear from any kind of frost damage or any cool temperature, we'll go ahead and trim this back to cut off all the dead.
Yep.
And it's gonna pop right back because it wasn't cold enough to really affect the root zone of the plant.
Yeah.
In some climates and it's gonna get cold enough that it'll definitely kill the plant. But what's really great about these black mullet peppers is a lot of people can be fearful of peppers because they're afraid that they're hot.
Because we associate this glossy look and everything with, this is gonna burn my mouth off.
Yeah, as these, at first they get a really deep green, and then as they continue to ripen, they will take on this black, a deep black color. Not a purple, but actually a black color. They're incredibly flavorful and very, very mild. If you get one of the seeds as you keep going up there, it'll be a little bit hotter. To me, it has more of a fruitier flavor than what your typical bell peppers would have.
Yeah. And really delicious and very juicy and no spicy at all.
It's not spicy at all. It's very sweet. So in some cases, you know, when you're thinking about gardening, and depending on the size of your family, if you're just feeding yourself or a couple of people, instead of growing a plant that produces a really big pepper that may end up in the refrigerator, if it ends up in the refrigerator, you know, every minute that's losing its nutrient content. So maybe what you want to do is to have peppers like this that give you those great flavors, but also are size appropriate for you to be able to pick and consume.
And then leave the rest on the plant.
Leave the rest on the plant.
Yeah.
And so then you always have the plants that have the highest nutrient content that you're actually consuming.
That's a great tip. And this guy broke up over there, is this a leek?
This is an onion.
So you got these onions growing, and I just kind of stuffed some onion in my pepper, and now I'm gonna combine those flavors together. So delicious, Alex, really good.
With the onions, we do have some leeks planted, we have garlic, and commonly what I like to do is I'll edge the beds with onions, garlics, leeks. It helps to keep the pests down.
That's great. And that second bite right there, I got a little bit of the spice, but not enough to be overpowering, just enough to make me happy.
And that's what as you're coming into the seeds. So if you cut this open, and that membrane that's in there, if you cut that open and remove the seeds and that membrane, you won't get any of the spice.
Or if you like that like me, you're gonna leave that in your salsa.
You can, yeah.
I wanna also show your beautiful artichoke plant. It looks very massive and very impressive. So this artichoke plant was a volunteer, And it probably needs to get a little bit bigger before it produces the artichokes. But it's looking like it's about, what, 6 months in or something?
It's about 6 months in. You know, I love artichoke plants in the landscape. To me, they're sort of like a Jurassic Park plant.
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't seem like it comes from this time.
And everybody loves the artichoke heart, right? But the plant really makes you earn it.
It does. It does. That's why I think it can be expensive when we buy them.
But how is that? Talk about how does it make you earn it?
Well, because it takes such a long time for it to grow.
Yep.
You got to have good soil. You got to be patient with it, and it's a sizable plant. It takes up some area in the garden too. So, you know, if you have room in your landscape to put them in the ground, it can be a great place to put them. But also, you know, it's probably now about 6-7 feet across. That's about how big they're going to get. It'll keep pumping out these from the center, the leaves, and then what's going to happen is in the very center, this is where the stalk will come out. And that stalk is what's actually going to have the artichoke hearts. A lot of people don't realize too, those stalks are also edible.
How do you prepare them? How do you eat them?
You can cook those and process them just like you would the regular artichoke.
So when the stalk comes out and the artichoke forms before it blooms, you can eat the whole stalk part.
You can eat the whole stalk part with that. Now it's going to be sort of like the broccoli stalk. It's a little bit more fibrous.
But for juicing maybe,
for juicing, it's going to
cooking up or anything.
Yeah, just saute that a little bit longer to help break it down. You obviously need to peel that, so you've taken off that and you're using more of the core of the stem.
Maybe you can even pickle it.
You could probably pickle it. I've not tried that, but that's a great idea.
Yeah.
But it's gonna shoot up multiple heads. Now, if you can get this to go through, it will last for several years in the garden.
The actual plant.
And the older the plant is, the more it's going to produce. So the first year you may only get 6 or 8, but then that second year you can get triple the amount of great artichokes off of that same plant. It can tolerate our mild frost that we typically get here. If we get a hard frost, I would definitely cover them. But the mild frost doesn't seem to affect them much at all.
Do you think if you were to get a really hard frost, you could potentially cover your entire garden and use the lights as a heat source?
The lights would help to add to the heat in here. I would probably keep them a little bit closer and maybe take them down and run them along the edge of the beds, because that heat's going to radiate up.
Sure.
So as long as you're doing that and you have a little cover onto it, and which we have in here, you can't really see now, but we're going to have a little bit of cold this weekend. So I'm going to put the hoops on, and we have receivers in all these beds that have ready for the hoops every few feet. So we can put the hoops on and put the frost cloth right on top of the gardens. And when you're trying to retain heat, what you want to do is you want to have that closer. You know, the sun protection's up high, the warmth and the cold protection is down lower to the plants.
And when you guys have these artichokes growing for 2 years, maybe even 3 years, do you tuck in more compost and worm castings as the seasons go on to
Definitely.
feed it? Because they're heavy feeders probably for that reason.
They are very heavy feeders, so we can definitely do that. One of the things that can really happen with a lot of gardeners when they're adding compost to it, you know, it's sort of old school thinking is, I need to work this in the soil. Which if you do that, any of the plants that are going for multiple years, you're going to disturb the roots.
Absolutely.
So what we practice is what's called no-till gardening. So
you just layer it.
We just layer it, put it on. All the microbes, the earthworms, the nematodes, it's going to bring all that stuff down into the soil. So you don't really need to work it in.
You don't want to disturb that civilization that's down there of microbes.
No, you don't. And it's sort of a lazy way of gardening. But it's a lot easier.
It's
but
nature's way.
It's better, and it is nature's way.
Absolutely. Let me show the audience here what you got going on for these hoop houses and the brackets you got on your raised beds.
Very good. Have one set up over here.